chalice this morning in honor of those who, like our speaker this morning, live lives full of compassion, encouraging all of us to do the same. Unitarian Universalists honor diverse beliefs and theologies. Both African religions and Christian religions respect the earth and the natural world. The words of our first hymn are attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, patron saint of animals and birds, and will be the subject of today's religious education class. So respect for animals and earth is described beautifully in hymn number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. So please stand as you are willing and able and sing verses 1 to 3. Good morning, and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is George Rourke, and I'm a part of the membership committee here at UUCF. And we're going to have a new member recognition Sunday here in a few weeks, and I invite any of you who have been considering becoming a member of our congregation to please see me in Adams Hall after the morning service. Our minister, Reverend Leonetta Balasi, is out of the pulpit today. Our guest speaker this morning is Reverend Peggi Tabor, and I'll introduce her later in the service. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our visitors today. Please join us for coffee, bagels, and conversation after the service downstairs. A member of the membership committee will be at the visitors table if you have any questions. At this time, I invite any first-time visitors to stand and let us know where you are from and how you heard about us. We would like to meet you. No one today. During the service, we have a supervised nursery for babies and toddlers and religious education classes for children and youth. Please see Natalie Case, our religious education coordinator. Thank you, Natalie. For more information about these programs. If you need to leave the service for any reason, there are two other locations in the building where the service is broadcast. and an usher can direct you. Let's remember that we are a welcoming congregation. We welcome all humans, regardless of race, sexual orientation, belief system, and age, even the small children that are fidgety and make noises. These little humans are our future, and we welcome them while they're in the meeting house. I think we have about 5 announcements this morning. This morning at 11:45, we're having a presentation discussion about our upcoming parking lot paving project. If you haven't yet signed up for one of our meetings, please join us this morning. And the meeting is in the Marge Brown room starting at 11:45, and it'll end at 12:30. Walk in the Woods. This Sunday, the Gregories will lead a walk in the woods, leaving at noon, assuming it's not raining. The Daytimers will meet this Thursday at 12 noon to carpool to the Plymouth Cider Mill on Warren and Plymouth. Anyone over 50 years old is welcome. Maybe even if you're 45, you could sneak in. We'll let you in there. There is a large room with many picnic tables inside where we can eat our lunch. Bring your lunch, and we will buy the cider and donuts. If it is more convenient for you to go there directly, please be there by 12:30. And any questions, see Dorothy Richards. We will be going to Mustard's Retreat. This is a musical duo on October 28th. We're going to be meeting here at 6:15 for a potluck, and there's more information on this in your order of service. And lastly, 4 weeks from now, we will be having our annual auction. So think about what you can offer at the auction, and get your donation forms from Paul Denowitz after the service this morning. This year's theme is an evening in Paris. Costumes are welcome but not necessary. But who would not like to dress up for an evening in Paris? There's more information in your order of service. And again, please check the order of service for other announcements about upcoming events. Please take a minute to silence your phones. We will now read together the Litany of Gathering, which is in your order of service. This is our sacred time and space to renew our spirits, to explore the mystery, and to share our joys and sorrows. With you, I find strength.
Together we become bound by love and respect.
With me, you can share your deepest self. We share triumphs. We share failures.
And we share our human nature.
We share joy.
And it multiplies.
And we share sorrow.
And it begins to lessen.
So please come forward to the microphone with brief joys or sorrows of a personal nature that you wish to share with us this morning.
After our combined sorrow a year ago, when William Watson died of a massive heart attack, today I have a joy. Turns out that William, in 2005, wrote a book, How to Become Your Own Therapist. And as a member of the men's group and on behalf of Ann Patrice, we're giving a copy of this to UUCF Library.
Good morning. My name's Elizabeth Knight, and I think it's interesting that George mentioned there's a membership coming up, because I was just thinking and telling my son Lucas on our drive over here, I said it was about a year that we first started coming here on another rainy fall day. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, because I don't think I could have found a better place. My husband and I, for a while, we left the Catholic Church. We're kind of kept coming back to UU as something we thought we'd like to get our kids exposed to teach them about the world and something more outside the box of where our families come from. So, and I think we found a pretty good spot here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. It's good to have you. Liz, could you please light a second candle? Oh,
Oh, he doesn't want to do it. It was his birthday yesterday, and so he wanted to say it.
My name is Ricky. This is my third time coming to this church, and I'm really excited. And it's also my son Hunter's first time, and I hope to make this a weekly tradition. So,
thank you for joining us. We light this final candle for the unspoken joys and sorrows among us. And may these lights remind us of the meaning of community and the mission of this congregation. This morning's message of all ages will be given by our religious education coordinator, Natalie Case.
Good morning. Morning, boys and girl. So, according to Merriam-Webster, the definition of a superhero is a fictional hero having extraordinary or superhuman powers. Also, an exceptionally skillful or successful person. So my theory is that each one of us has a superhero inside of us, that each one of us is capable of being a superhero. And I have a couple examples this morning of people who have just done that, exhibited superhero skills. Can everybody see that? Okay, so this one was made by Amelia Lytle. It's a food cooler. So you take a fork and you add a fan to it, and it cools your food. And guess how old she was? 6. She was 6 years old. Raise your hand if you're 6 years old. See? There you go. This one is one of my favorites. It's called Phone Friend. So telephone boxes are not big enough for wheelchairs. So this kid is inventing a box where the phone comes out. And it looks like this. Well, either 54 or 4. It's hard to tell. This invention is a family scooter. It works by all the family pushing, and it rides. It would be great for a big family. That's Wendy Ridley, and she's 9 years old. This one was created by Henry Hughes, 12 years old. This one is you put the toothpaste inside the hatch at the bottom, and when you push the button, it presses the toothpaste up the tube and out onto the toothbrush. So it looks like that. So no matter how old you are or how little or how big, if you're small or medium-sized, you're capable of being a superhero.
let us read together the unison words of offering. We give generously to support this church where love, justice, and equality inspire our acts of service and compassion. We dedicate these gifts to all that we stand for within the Unitarian Universalist tradition. Our speaker today is Reverend Peggi Tabor, who served as a Peace Corps volunteer in sub-Saharan Africa from 2004 to 2006, living in a remote mountain village. Her talk will cover village life in Africa with an emphasis on community life, the reality of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and what the U.S. Peace Corps is doing to help. Peggi is a certified integrated wellness and life coach. She holds an MBA in marketing and communications, as well as a master's degree in metaphysical science. She is an ordained minister with the International Metaphysical Ministry and is currently completing a PhD in philosophy. The title of her presentation is Africa Through American Eyes. Please welcome Peggi Tabor.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back here today. You asked me back. That's so great. We're going to start this morning's program with a poem by Emily Dickinson. She says, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain." Such beautiful music out of Africa. Please join me in just a moment of silent meditation. So today I get to talk to you about the 2 years that I spent in Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer. We're going to talk about the situation as it is today in Africa, what the Peace Corps has done to kind of ameliorate a very desperate situation in many instances, and then at the end I'll tell you ways that you could help if you'd like to. I have much more to say today than I'm going to be able to say in 20 minutes. So I'll stay afterwards and be downstairs, and if you have any questions about any aspect of my talk this morning, I'll be happy to answer them then. Many of you may know that the idea of the U.S. Peace Corps started right here in Michigan when the then Senator John F. Kennedy came to the University of Michigan Union steps late at night after a long day of campaigning. Hundreds of University of Michigan students showed up, and he said, hey, would you guys think of taking what you're learning here to other countries and sharing that knowledge? And he had an enthusiastic response. So one of the first things he did when he was president was he set up an agency of the federal government focused on world peace and friendship. Since that installation of the U.S. Peace Corps as one of our government agencies, over 225,000 Americans have served in 101 host countries throughout the world, working on everything from education to HIV/AIDS help, to teaching, to IT, beekeeping, farming. If you name it, the Peace Corps has done it. The way it works is the Peace Corps' mission is threefold. First, countries ask us, they come to the Peace Corps agency or right in Washington, D.C. and say, we need help with this. The Peace Corps people there go through the list of applicants, which is huge, and say, we've got just the person for you. That person goes over there and shares what we know, shares the skills that we have learned in this country, and also present Americanism to these third world countries. The third part of the Peace Corps mission is why I'm here today. The third part is then we come home and we share with our fellow Americans what we've learned about other parts of the world. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I was in Africa. Over 40% of Peace Corps volunteers go to Africa because the problems there are enormous. I served in a tiny little country, and my laser pointer burned out of juice, so it's here. See this teeny little circle? That was the center of my world. That's Lesotho, the country of Lesotho, completely surrounded by the country of South Africa. It's a very mountainous country, and it's tiny. To see how big Africa is in relation to that, look what fits into Africa. The United States, Argentina, India, Western Europe, and China. All those countries fit into the continent of Africa with space left over. Africa is huge. The country I was in is tiny, but it's the mountain kingdom. It has the distinction of having the highest, lowest altitude. Its lowest altitude is higher than any other low altitude of any other country in the world. It starts at 3,000 feet and it goes up from there. And I lived way up in the mountains in a very remote village right at the top of that. The way to get around this beautiful country is really on horseback. There's really only one road, and it goes sort of around the perimeter between Lesotho and South Africa. So you can see how gorgeous it is. It's just beautiful. The towns are terrible. The towns are third world, poverty-filled, no sanitation towns. But the country itself is gorgeous. I lived in a very traditional African village. These are the kind of clothes I wore. I want to be sure you could recognize me. So I wore the same outfit I wore the entire time I lived in Africa. That was my hut, called a rondeval. That was my horse, Lance, who was my Volkswagen, got me everywhere. And I lived with in an African family. When a Peace Corps volunteer is introduced into a village, the village actually adopted me. I became a member of the Alehang family. It's a click language. And lived with them as an absolute member of their family. They gave me a name. My name was Mentabisen, which means rejoice with me. I loved my name. All the African names mean something. This is the family I lived with, and they are dressed in post-missionary clothes. You can see they're wrapped in blankets because it snows here. It's way closer to Antarctica than it is to the center. And see that little girl in the front? Her name is Marineo. She was my sister or my grandchild, depending upon who you were talking to over there. And that little baby that she's holding, that baby was born into my hands on my first day on the job. So I'm there in this village, in this little hut. It used to be a storage hut, so there are spiders. And I'm talking, there are spiders the kind you see in Tarzan movies. So I was just on my sleeping bag looking for spiders. 2 in the morning, I hear a knock at the door, and the lady of the house, Mema Chica, says, "Oh, please to help me, baby, it comes." I said, "What?" I picked up this little black bag of stuff the Peace Corps gave me, Band-Aids and stuff, and paper towels and paper, plastic gloves, and a book my sister gave me called Worst Case Scenarios. And one page said, what to do for a baby. So it's a big story, but I'll tell you downstairs, it's very interesting. That baby was born on the dirt floor with my Peace Corps paper towels underneath her. And it was just the most beautiful little baby. It became my grandchild and grew into the finest young man. Here he is showing us what a big boy he is. And see that little ring of beads around his waist? That's how mothers, there's no scales or anything or measuring tape, so that's how mothers see if their babies are grown up to be healthy kids. They keep adding, as long as they're adding little beads to his little waistband, the child is growing and everything is good. This country is so poor. It's a subsistence country, which means that if you don't grow it, you don't eat it. And so the women are out early in the morning. Corn is the main crop, corn and sorghum. And the ground has been farmed so much that it's not very rich soil, but they work day to night on these crops, and then when the corn comes in, hallelujah, it dries right on the stalks, they pull it out, and then the families, we all sit around a big pile of corn, and with a sharp rock, we hit that hard corn, and it goes into a little pile, which goes into the sacks for the whole family. But you see those empty cobs? Those are the productivity bonus. Being a marketing person, I was interested in this. The more cobs you get to take those home, and those are very good for starting fires. And of course, everything is cooked outdoors. That corn is ground into a meal, and it's mixed with water and cooked outside under, in a pot, and that's called papa. That's the main staple, papa. It's just cornmeal. It's kind of you can pick it up and hold it like a polenta almost. And with papa, if you're lucky, and it's the summer season, you eat marrojo, which is anything green. Any edible thing that's green is cooked in water with salt for a real long time, and you take a handful of papa, dip it in the marrojo, and that's, if you're lucky, your meal for the day. And usually, it's just the meal of the day. This is Mema Chica, and her son, Chica. Her name used to be something else, but in this culture, when a woman has a child, particularly if it's a boy, she takes on her son's name. So the father named him Chica, and so she became Mema Chica, mother of Chica. And you say, why doesn't he help her carry that? Because that is woman's work. The division of labors is absolutely strict. Nobody argues with it. And all the women there can carry buckets up and down stairs, up and down mountains, and buckets full of water. That weighs 64 pounds. They have to get their water, of course, me too, from a stream. You get your water, not me, put it on the head, and then walk home with it. The other liquid refreshment is called jwala. It's a beer made out of sorghum, and with a 45% unemployment rate, alcoholism is a problem in this country. The guys just love to sit under a tree, dance and sing, and that yellow bucket is full of jwala. It tastes terrible. I did taste it, scientific. It's thick and it's grainy. It's like a sour porridge. It's really awful, but I guess it holds quite a kick. So these men are dancing and they are singing, and everybody dances and sings. The rhythm and the harmonies of this people, they're all talented singers and dancers. And these guys are dancing and they're talking about killing the lion and saving the village and just being cool. And these are the women singing on their knees. Women in this country are legal minors. They cannot have a bank account. They cannot sign a paper without a male member of the family, be it father, son, uncle, anybody, has to co-sign, because women are legal minors. It's one of the many problems. But because they are home a lot, working in the fields, the girls get better educations in this country than the boys, because the boys are herd boys. A family's wealth is determined completely by how many animals they have. Doesn't matter if they're big, fat, nice, one big fat cow. No, 2 skinny cows is way better. It's all about the numbers. So these boys get up before dawn and they take these animals up into the hills, and they, the council of elders, of which, because I was so old, I sat on 7 villages, council of elders, and stuff I talked about AIDS all the time, but what they talked about was which of the fields of corn had all the corns off the huck, so that all the herd boys could take the cows, and the cows would eat every single bit of those dried corn stalks. Or where would they go into the mountains? What fields would they go to? And handle anything about misbehavior in the village. So these boys, when they got to the ages of 13 to 18, would have to go through the ordeal, and it's an ordeal, of circumcision school. They would go up into the mountains for 3 months with sangomas, traditional healers, and with village elders, and they would learn everything they needed to know to be a man in this community and in this society. If a boy in the villages did not go through circumcision school, there was no way he would ever hold any position of authority in any village. He couldn't be on the elders' council. He couldn't participate in tribal courts of law. So these boys went away boys, and they came back men. And when they came back, you could hear, they'd all come in a huge group, and you could hear all the villagers from all the surrounding villages, the men, the women, the children, everybody that was left behind, they would ululate, which is like this. I'm going to step way back. Like 1,000 of those. It's really cool. The sound just reverberates in amongst the mountains, and you know that they're coming. So, even though there's a lot of cultural things that we might disagree with, one of the things that has happened in this country is 85% of these people are Christians. It was very easy for the missionaries in the early 1800s to convert people from their tribal religions to Christianity, because all the Bantu tribal religions, there's one God, there's one Supreme Spirit. In some of the myths, he's the oldest living ancestor. They believe that when someone dies, as long as someone remembers them, that person lives in the spirit world. So God, in some of the myths, is just the oldest ancestor. And in other myths, it has to do with the sun. And so mankind, in a certain myth, made God mad. And God used to be, heaven used to be much closer to the earth, but man made God man by offending him by manipulating and corrupting the natural world. And so God went further away from man. And now God needs to be approached through an intermediary, and it could be your ancestor. So when the Christian missionaries started talking about saints and stuff, that fit in just great. Oh yeah, we got Uncle George. He's our he talks to God for us and gets us and keeps us healthy, because the Bantu tribes have absolute, total belief that these spirits have daily ability to interact in your daily life. And that can be a real problem. If you didn't bury them correctly, if you offended them during life, they could come back after death and do bad things to you. So, along with all the Christian ministers, which it seemed like every other person was in the village was one after they got to a certain age. They all thought I was. I wasn't. I didn't become a minister until after I got back, but they thought I was. But here's because I preach all the time. So here's a Sangoma. This is the traditional healer. This is a very important person in the village. This is the person that really helped you interact with the spirits of your ancestors, that helped heal you. These are the healers. The problem with this is that the healing methods in this country, it's a blood culture. For instance, like in the spring, you're going to have the Sangoma come to your home, and he's going to cut the father's finger. And then he's going to cut the mother's finger, and they're going to do like that Indian blood brother thing. Then they're going to cut each of the child. Well, whoever is HIV infected, it goes right down the line. As a result, more than 30% of the people in this country are infected with HIV/AIDS. It's an enormous pandemic. It has wiped out an entire generation. These are Sangomas, and here's the other bad thing. Because the Sangoma, did I mention, starts with his finger? I worked with 14 Sangomas very closely that were the chief medicine men and women of the villages I worked with. We became very, very close and very good friends. And every single one of them was HIV positive because they had participated in all of these blood rights. But by the time I left, they were all on antiretroviral drugs. They all knew their status. They all knew how to tell the villagers how to know their status, get the simple blood test. It was really, these are wonderful, wonderful people. The other reality in Africa is poverty. Have any of you read Jeffrey Sachs' book, The End of Poverty? He talks about 3 different kinds of poverty. There's extreme poverty, where you're just not meeting the daily needs for food, and chronically hungry, unable to access health care. There's moderate poverty, where your needs are met but just barely. And then there's relative poverty, which is really what we have in this country. It means that the household income is very significantly below the average income. Over 1/2 of Africa's population is extremely poor. And sub-Saharan Africa continues to dominate the picture, with 87% of the world's 1.6 billion people living in poverty that live in moderate poverty. So poverty and hunger are serious problems throughout the country. It used to be that the village was the social security system of this country. If you lost a son, the chief in the village, we would all take care of each other. They all take care of each other. However, this woman, all of her sons are dead. All of her daughters and daughters-in-law are dead. She has 11 children living with her in that hut, and she is the sole provider. And she's really old. Her name is May Palesa. I used to give her Advil PM. She said, "Oh, yeah, that really makes me feel better." I got jobs for everybody in the village through the United Nations Food for Work program. But just to continue on the poverty, this young woman, she doesn't even have a grandmother. This young woman lives in the hut, and those are her little siblings, and she's responsible for all of them. Now, the government, there's an elementary school, and kids can go to school, and they get a meal. They get some papa and morojo at school. There's hardly any teachers. There's no desks, no books, no nothing. There's a big concrete building that World Vision built, and everybody goes there with a few of the adults, and they eat, and they sing songs and stuff. This group, I was able to get funding for these particular orphans. Our elementary school, which served quite a few villages, had 234 students. 110 of them were orphans. These children weren't quite orphans. Their father had died, their mother was dying, but they were able to come to my hut every week and get a bag that's cornmeal, oil, and that's a can of fish. And that saved them from starvation. I mean, it's not a lot, but it saved them from absolutely being hungry every single day. My hut was piled with food. I kept getting, here's the job of a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer. We are the advocate for the people that we serve. I know how to go to the city and go to the government and apply for grants. And our village wrote a constitution, so we became a legitimate CBO, community-based organization. So I could take that paper from the government to the United Nations and get all kinds of help. The help is there. The main job the Peace Corps does is to be the advocate to connect the people he or she serves with the help that is there for them. Look at how beautiful these children are. They're just like our children. They have no idea how poor they are. They're happy, they play. If they're not sick, they're the most joyous, darling children you could imagine. One of my projects was every Monday I would have an orphans party at my house. The 110 orphans were divided into 3 groups. And they could come, and my sisters and my friends, I mean, they sent me boxes of coloring books and crayons and fun stuff for these kids to do. And they would have a fun day, and they'd have some juice to drink and an apple and a peanut butter sandwich, and they thought they were in Disneyland. And they knew whose turn it was. If somebody from next week's group came, I mean, it was like, get out of here. You can't come to this party this week. You're on next week's party. And those people in the back are Sangomas. They're just wonderful people. I went around, and these are just a bunch of little preschoolers that met in a cabin. I was teaching them English through nursery songs. And I encourage you all to join the Peace Corps. I mean, I did it after I retired. It's the best post-retirement gig you can imagine. It really changed my worldview. I taught English, as a second language, but I had no idea how to do it. But it's doable. You just do it. These were workers on one of the many projects that we got funded through the United Nations. And on their breaks, I would teach them like tourist music or tourist language. Hello, can I help you? Instead of, could I have some money? I mean, I was really encouraging them not to ask tourists for anything, but to see what they could give tourists to invite, because we were building a cultural village right at the birthplace of the founder of the country. This woman is from an NGO that does HIV/AIDS education. I got to a passable ability with this language, but I could not speak fluently enough at all to give real talks on HIV/AIDS. So she's meeting with a group of villagers. She's telling them exactly what it is, how it is passed from one person to the other, and then she has a whole medical team with her to do the little pring test on the thing, and they can tell right then if they are positive. And then they bring the little slip from that guy to my house, and I give them lunch. It worked all the time. Every single person in all the villages was tested by the time I left. This is a wonderful Peace Corps project. This Prince Harry from England, one of our Peace Corps volunteers, appealed to England for help for orphans, and this is an orphanage. And Prince Harry actually visited Lesotho, and he helped build the fence around this. So here's Prince Harry with a fence hole digger, and he's got 3 armed security guards making sure that the prince is okay, and he's digging holes. And all the Peace, I never got to meet him, but most everybody else did, and they said he was just wonderful. He was his mother's son. Another Peace Corps volunteer made this beautiful greenhouse out of just sticks, and this is recycled plastic from a factory in the capital city of Maseru. How am I doing on? I'm okay. 5 more minutes. Capital city of Maseru. So this extended the growing season, which was great. One of my very favorites, see this? This comes from there. This is hand-woven weaving, and this Peace Corps volunteer got money from Ireland to start an actual weaving factory. She employed 27 women, taught them how to weave. Those jobs kept those families in a chicken every month. I mean, really big time valuable income to them. And it was so fun. When we all brought all of our visitors to this factory because we could buy these and we could help put the money into the economy. And these are all weavers. And when you brought your visitor in, they'd all get up and they'd come and they'd sing, "Welcome to you, we got some good stuff for you," and in this wonderful rhythm and harmony and dancing. The building that she built for this company is made out of tin cans. This is another Peace Corps thing. Some guy figured out how to wire, tin cans over there are much more sturdy than the little flibby aluminum ones we have. He figured out how to wire these together and make them into like tin can drywall. And so win-win-win. It's cleaned up the tin cans from all the gutters all over in the capital city and the towns. It stopped people from cutting down the very scarce wood that was holding the soil in place. And it makes good insulation. It's really, we were all building buildings out of tin cans from after this guy showed us how to do it. This is one of my projects. When I went to the leaders after moving into the village, I said, "What do you need most?" And they said, "We have no way to get our sick people into the clinic," which was real far away. So I found this guy, the guy in the red shirt and black coat. His name is Intate Maruti. That car is held together with wires and rubber bands, and he could get it anywhere. We would get it as close as we could to the sick people, and then their family would help them into the truck, and then we'd take a whole truck full of them to the clinic, drop them off with a couple of sangomas to keep them company. Then Maruti and I would hightail it into town and buy however much money I had. I had a lot of grants and stuff coming into me. So we would fill the truck with food, go back up to the village, distribute it amongst all these are grandparents who have no way, so this is putting some vegetables into their diet. And then we go back to the clinic, pick up the people who had hopefully seen the one nurse that handled 350 minimum a day of people who are starving and dying. The first 4 months, she made me sit in with her, and she said, "These people are starving. This person is starving. This person is sick, but this..." So I knew right away that my main job was to get food for the people. So we got this Food for Work program that was just outstanding. Here's some of the leaders of one of the programs. This is the cultural village that we built. Look at these women are cutting rocks out of the side of the mountain, putting them on their heads, and carrying them 1.5 miles to the site of this village to build this cultural village. Look at the enthusiasm with which they show up for work. And their pay comes from the United States. Their pay comes from the United Nations World Food Program. Okay, so this is see way up in the corner there, wait, that little hill, that's our village. The truck from the UN could only get not very close to our village because it was a flatbed truck. And so, but dawn on payday, I'm telling you, the whole village is there. And they're all singing "God Bless America." Seriously. And I cried. I cried every single time that they did this. And they said, "Mentabi Saint, why do you always cry when we sing of our love for your country?" And I said, "Because I'm so happy." And I can't, this is 12 years ago, and this happens every time. So forget this, let's move right on. Not supposed to do that. So they kept wonderful records. They ran these little businesses like any small business, as good as any small business I've seen in the United States. They kept great records. They fulfilled all of the requirements for the United Nations. These people know how. They will do what they need to do to get the help they need. They just need a little help in figuring out how to get the help. My friend sent me cases of seeds of things that would grow there, like beets and different kinds of hardy spinach and stuff. Everybody got seeds, and then we'd have cooking classes at my place, and I'd show them recipes for how they could include these new vegetables into their diet, and then we all ate. We had a chicken farm from World Vision. We got 300 baby chicks. And the chickens, when they got to the age, the eggs would go to the orphans. The chickens, when they got too old to lay eggs, we'd sell the chickens to buy more grain to feed the chickens. It was really a great little project. The school, this big empty school building, had no toilets. So we built in the traditional way of building things, we built a boys and girls toilets. That employed 125 people for a year and a half, and they got all the food they needed to feed their families. So, what can you do? Join the Peace Corps. I mean, seriously. 7% of Peace Corps volunteers are over 55. And it's just, I mean, it's a life-changing experience. Or if you'd like to contribute to a Peace Corps project, you can go to the website, www.peacecorps.gov. You can choose a country, you can choose a project, and you can send money to that Peace Corps operation in that country, and it will go to that project. Please read The End of Poverty by Jeffrey Sachs. He talks about ways that we as first world nations can end poverty within the next 10 years. It hasn't happened. But, and here's some foundations that really the money goes where they're supposed to go. The Clinton Foundation is absolutely great. Heifer International, Pay It Forward, is absolutely great. Money that you give to those organizations does not go into the pocket of administrators. It goes right to the projects. Call your state and local representative and tell them the Peace Corps needs a bigger budget. We only have like under $400 million a year. That's really nothing as our peace and educational outreach to the rest of the world to show them what Americans can do. And the United Nations also has wonderful volunteer opportunities. So that's the end of my talk, and I think we're going to, a reading, a hymn? Excuse me, sorry, I forgot. Oh yes, it's hymn number 148, and it's Let Freedom Span Both East and West. So the final reading for today is from Edward Everett Hale. And Mr. Hale says, I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy. That was excellent. Especially that part about God, George being a God. I hope you were paying attention to that. This concludes our service. Please stay and enjoy the postlude, and then join us downstairs for coffee and bagels.
Okay, I'm just going to put on some music here. Oops. I'm sorry. Let me try that music again. Oh. This is real African. Should I turn it up?
Rino Luabula. Ba oublié. Vieux Moulin. C'était un grand musicien qui m'a condamné dans la bouteille pendant 6600 ans. Sakolema.